Thank you for listening. I hope to write more in the future. Disclaimer. I don't own Harry Potter. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Forgotten Knowledge. Chapter 1, The Hidden Marking. The Gryffindor common room was quiet except for the soft crackling of the fireplace. It was late, and most of the students had gone to bed, but Harry, Ron, and Hermione were huddled around a table, staring intently at the Marauder's map. Harry traced his wand along the map's parchment, watching as tiny ink lines twisted and shifted to reveal hidden corridors and secret passages. His eyes landed on something unusual, a marking that hadn't been there before. The Chamber of Forgotten Knowledge. Harry blinked. Have either of you seen this before? Ron, chewing on a chocolate frog, leaned in. Nope. And I feel like I'd remember a place called that. Hermione, her curiosity piqued, studied the map. There's no record of anything by that name in Hogwarts, a history. I would've. Ron rolled his eyes. Of course you would've. Hermione ignored him. It's near the west wing of the library. But look, there's no entrance. Harry frowned. That means it's hidden. Ron groaned. Great. The last time we went looking for a hidden entrance, we ended up in the Chamber of Secrets with a massive snake. Let's hope this one's less deadly, Harry muttered. But something about the marking felt different. The ink was faded, as though the chamber had been lost to time, even from the Marauder's map. Harry met his friend's eyes. We have to find it. The search begins. The three of them slipped out of the common room under the cover of Harry's invisibility cloak. The castle was eerily quiet, the torchlight flickering along the stone walls as they made their way to the library's west wing. The area was deserted, lined with towering bookshelves filled with dusty, forgotten tomes. At the far end of the corridor stood a massive, ornate bookshelf carved with ancient symbols. According to the Marauder's map, the entrance to the chamber should be right here. Ron frowned. So, do we knock? Hermione huffed and began inspecting the bookshelf. This isn't just a normal shelf. Look at the carvings, these are ancient runes. Harry ran his fingers along the wood. They look familiar. They should. Some of them match the protective wards around Hogwarts, Hermione said. This isn't just hiding a door, it's a seal. Ron groaned. And I bet it's not as simple as Alohomora. Hermione pulled out her wand. Let's find out. She whispered Alohomora, but nothing happened. The bookshelf remained still, the runes faintly glowing. Harry frowned. He had a feeling brute force wouldn't work here. What if it needs something else? Like a phrase? Or a specific spell? Hermione nodded. If this chamber was truly forgotten, it must have been sealed for a reason. She examined the runes again. These symbols, they reference knowledge and memory. Maybe it only opens to those who seek wisdom. Ron snorted. So, we have to prove we're nerds? Hermione shot him a look. Harry stepped forward. If it's about knowledge, maybe we have to offer something. He pulled his wand and placed the tip against the wood. He thought for a moment, then spoke clearly. We seek the knowledge that was lost. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the runes flared brightly, and the bookshelf shook. Dust billowed from its edges as the shelves collapsed inward, twisting into themselves like a puzzle rearranging. Ron took a step back. Is it supposed to do that? The bookshelf groaned as it reformed, not into an open doorway, but into a stone arch with no passage behind it. Harry's stomach sank. It's still closed. Hermione bit her lip. Maybe that wasn't enough. Harry reached out and touched the cold stone of the archway. The moment his fingers brushed it, a deep, resonant voice filled the corridor, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. Knowledge is not freely given. It is earned. The archway shimmered, and suddenly, letters began carving themselves into the stone like an invisible hand was writing them. A riddle. Hermione inhaled sharply as the words formed before them. I have no mouth, yet I speak the truth. I live in ink but am not a quill. What am I? Ron blinked. Oh, great. A talking wall that gives us homework. Hermione, however, had already figured it out. Her eyes lit up, and she whispered, a book. The moment she said it, the stone archway rippled like water. The solid rock began to fade, revealing a darkened passageway beyond. Harry took a deep breath. Well. Here we go. And together, they stepped into the unknown depths of the Chamber of Forgotten Knowledge. Chapter 2, The Path of Riddles. The moment Harry, Ron, and Hermione stepped past the first archway, the tunnel swallowed them in silence. The rough stone walls were lined with ancient carvings, many faded with time, others still faintly glowing with long-forgotten magic. The further they descended, the colder and heavier the air became, as if the very atmosphere resisted their presence. Ron rubbed his arms. Tell me again why we're following the spooky tunnel of doom? Because no one's seen this place in 1,000 years, Hermione whispered in awe, tracing her fingers over a row of symbols. These runes, they're older than Hogwarts itself. Harry, gripping his wand tightly, kept his eyes forward. He had the unsettling feeling that the tunnel wasn't just leading them somewhere, it was testing them. Then, up ahead, they saw the first door. The first riddle. It was a massive slab of stone, twice as tall as Hagrid, carved with shifting runes. As they neared, the symbols began to rearrange themselves, forming words in front of their eyes. To walk the path of knowledge, you must prove wisdom. I am always hungry. I must always be fed. The thing I touch will soon turn red. What am I? Ron groaned. Oh, come on. This is like a bad homework assignment. But Hermione had already solved it. It's fire. The moment she spoke, the runes flared, and the stone door split in half, retracting into the walls with a deep rumbling sound. Harry exhaled. One down. They pressed forward, deeper into the unknown. The second riddle, a mistake. The next door was different. It was a massive circular stone, its surface covered in swirling symbols. As they approached, a second riddle formed. The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I? Ron squinted. I dunno. Time? The moment the word left his lips, the torches lining the walls went out. A deep, echoing sound filled the tunnel, a grinding noise, like stone scraping against stone. Then, from the ceiling, something moved. Harry barely had time to react before sharp stone spikes began descending from above. Run! Hermione screamed. They bolted backward as the ceiling came crashing down, stopping inches from the floor. Dust filled the air, and when it settled, the spikes had retracted, but the door remained firmly shut. A new message appeared on the stone. Second chances are rare, but wisdom is earned. Speak again, wisely. Ron, panting, looked pale. Bloody hell. What kind of test kills you for getting the answer wrong? Hermione swallowed hard. It doesn't kill you, it punishes ignorance. Harry wiped sweat from his forehead. Let's not make that mistake again. He thought for a moment, then said, footsteps. The runes flashed. The circular stone rolled aside, revealing another passageway. Ron exhaled, still shaken. Remind me never to guess again. They stepped forward, more cautious than before. The final door in the chamber beyond. The tunnel widened into something even grander. The air felt thick with magic, as though the walls themselves hummed with energy. Then, before them, stood the final door. Unlike the others, this one wasn't made of stone. It was a towering archway of shimmering silver metal, embedded with thousands of tiny runes. At the top, 3 symbols stood out, one for Gryffindor, one for Ravenclaw, and one for Hufflepuff. But not Slytherin. Hermione's breath caught. This was a meeting place for the founders. Harry frowned. But why would they exclude Slytherin? As they stepped closer, the runes pulsed, forming a final message. When darkness sought to claim this place. 3 stood firm and sealed the gate. Those who seek forgotten lore must answer this, just one time more. I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with wind. What am I? Silence stretched between them. Then, softly, Harry whispered, an echo. The silver archway flashed brightly, then vanished. Beyond it lay a vast underground hall, so immense it felt like stepping into another world. The ceiling was carved with celestial constellations, glowing faintly like distant stars. Pillars lined the chamber, each marked with the names of the 3 founders. At the center of the hall stood something strange and massive. A great stone ring, several meters high, loomed over them. It was covered in intricate runes, many pulsing faintly as though waiting for something. And in front of it, a raised platform held an intricate circular mechanism, its dials marked with symbols neither magical nor entirely unfamiliar. Harry swallowed hard. What is this? Hermione stepped closer, fingers trembling as she traced the carvings. I don't know, she whispered. But it wasn't made by ordinary magic. Ron hesitated. So, do we touch it? The chamber remained eerily silent. The great ring stood motionless, its runes flickering in the dim light. The vast chamber stretched out before them, its towering pillars and celestial carvings glowing faintly in the dim light. At the center stood the great stone ring, its ancient symbols flickering as if awakening from a long slumber. The air in the chamber felt heavy, charged with waiting magic. And in front of the ring stood a raised platform, built of the same strange metal as the archway they had passed through. Embedded in it was a circular device, covered in dials and symbols, some familiar, others completely alien. Ron approached it cautiously, eyeing the strange markings. Looks like some kind of weird clock? Harry frowned. I wouldn't touch. Too late. Ron pressed one of the dials. Instantly, the entire room reacted. The great ring rumbled, its outer edge lighting up in sections, ancient runes pulsing to life. The dials on the platform shifted on their own, locking into new positions. A deep, thrumming hum filled the air, like the castle itself had begun to stir. Ron jerked his hand back. That wasn't me. That was definitely not me. Hermione spun toward him, eyes wide. Ronald, do you have any idea what you just did? No. You lot were standing around, looking all serious. I thought, he gestured wildly at the controls. Well, I thought it was some kind of puzzle. Harry ignored them, his eyes locked on the ring as the symbols around its edge began to glow one by one. Something deep inside him told him they had activated something important. Then, something else caught his eye. A pensieve. It sat to the side of the chamber, half hidden between two stone pillars. Its wide, shallow basin was carved with delicate swirling patterns, exactly like the one Dumbledore had used in his office. A pool of silvery liquid shimmered inside. Harry stepped toward it, his heart racing. I know what this is, he said, almost in a whisper. Hermione turned, following his gaze. A pensieve? Harry nodded. The same kind Dumbledore used to store memories. He ran his fingers over the stone edge. But what's it doing here? Ron, still nervously glancing back at the glowing dial-up device, edged closer. Only one way to find out. Harry hesitated. Then, with one last glance at his friends, he took a deep breath and plunged his hand into the swirling silver liquid. The moment his fingers touched it, the room vanished. Chapter 3, The Memory of the Forest. The moment Harry's fingers touched the shimmering liquid, the world lurched. His stomach flipped as though he had just been yanked forward by a portkey. The glowing chamber vanished in a swirl of silver mist, and suddenly, he was standing in a forest. A forgotten place. Towering ancient trees surrounded them, their gnarled trunks wider than Hagrid's hut. Their bark shimmered faintly, as though infused with old magic, and soft blue bioluminescent flowers hung from the branches, casting an eerie but beautiful glow. A silver mist curled around the ground, shifting like a living thing. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were no longer alone. 3 figures stood beneath the largest tree, ghostly echoes of the past. Though slightly transparent, they were detailed, so vivid they could have been standing there in the flesh. Harry's breath caught. He recognized them. Godric Gryffindor, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Helga Hufflepuff. The Founders' Debate. Rowena Ravenclaw's deep blue robes shimmered like starlight, and she had an air of quiet intensity. The Knocks are peaceful, she was saying, her voice rich and commanding. They have magic unlike anything we've ever seen, but they refuse to fight. They would rather vanish into the air than strike down an enemy. Godric Gryffindor, broad-shouldered and proud, crossed his arms. His red and gold tunic glowed in the dim light of the enchanted forest. Rowena, their magic is impressive, but what good is it if it cannot be used to defend? Our enemies grow stronger. The Dark Order has already begun its rise. If we do nothing, we risk everything. Helga Hufflepuff, warm-eyed but serious, clasped her hands. She was the most calm of the 3, but her concern was evident. The Knocks are right about one thing. If we build our school with war in mind, we will breed warriors, not scholars. Rowena nodded. Exactly. They believe knowledge is meant to elevate, not destroy. A 4th voice cut through the discussion. The Knocks are fools. Emerging from the shadows was Salazar Slytherin. His green robes rippled like snake scales as he strode into the clearing, his expression hard and unyielding. Gryffindor turned, his face darkening. You weren't invited to this meeting, Salazar. Slytherin sneered. And yet, here I am. He turned his gaze to the others. The Knocks live in their precious illusions of peace, thinking their magic makes them untouchable. But they fail to see the truth, power without force is wasted. Helga stepped forward. They wish to teach us, Salazar. To share their magic. Slytherin's eyes gleamed. And yet they withhold their greatest secrets. Why do they refuse to teach us how to wield their disappearing magic? He let the question hang. They fear us. Rowena lifted her chin. Or they respect the power we already possess. Salazar laughed. Naive as ever, Rowena. Tell me, what happens when our enemies learn of the Nox? Do you think they will simply leave them be? No. They will seek their knowledge by force. And if the Nox will not protect themselves, he smirked. Then why should we? Godric's fist clenched. Because we are better than them. We do not steal knowledge. Slytherin turned to him. Don't we? Or are you forgetting how we built our castle atop the ruins of something far older? A heavy silence followed. Harry, standing unseen in the memory, felt his stomach tighten. What ruins? Rowena exhaled sharply. The Nox warned us that war is never truly won, Godric. If we take their magic and use it for violence, we will become the very darkness we fear. Salazar's voice lowered, almost seductive. And if we do nothing, we will be destroyed. He turned away. I, for one, will not gamble our future on the mercy of ghosts. Without another word, he vanished into the mist. The protective magic of the Nox. As Salazar disappeared, Rowena waved her hand, and a shimmering barrier appeared in the air, a vast, transparent dome of swirling light. The blue bioluminescent flowers above flashed brightly, responding to the magic. This place is sacred, she said. The Nox have warded this forest with the veil of unseen paths. No enemy can enter unless their heart is pure. Helga nodded. And if someone forces their way in? Gryffindor smiled grimly. Then they will never find their way out. The three founders turned back toward the enormous tree, and for the first time, Harry noticed something hidden among the roots, a second ring, smaller than the one in the underground chamber. Its symbols were different, glowing with a soft blue light. This gate, Rowena murmured, connects to the Chamber of Forgotten Knowledge. Harry's breath caught. We must hide it, Helga said. Godric sighed. The question is, for how long? The memory flickered. And suddenly, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were yanked back into the present. Back in the chamber. The silver mist dissolved, and they were back in the vast underground hall. The great stone ring still loomed before them, its symbols now glowing brighter than before. The dials on the platform, the ones Ron had messed with, were moving on their own. Ron staggered, gripping the edge of the pensieve. Okay. What the bloody hell was that? Hermione's face was pale. A memory. A memory from the founders themselves. Harry looked at the glowing ring, his mind racing. This isn't just a chamber of forgotten knowledge. It's a gateway. He turned to them, realization dawning. The founders knew of another magical race. The Nox. Hermione swallowed. And Slytherin wanted to use their magic for war. Ron glanced at the now active dial-up device, its symbols lighting up in sequence. I think we just turned this thing on. Harry looked back at the glowing ring. His scar prickled slightly, as though something in the air had changed. The gateway was no longer dormant. Something on the other side had stirred. Chapter 4, The Address of Secrets. The glowing runes along the massive stone ring pulsed erratically, flickering as though caught between life and death. The strange dialing device in front of them whirred, its symbols shifting under unseen magic. The air in the chamber felt thick with anticipation, as if something was on the verge of happening. Then, with a sudden guttural hum, the ring's glow faded, and the dials locked in place. A deep, echoing clunk rang out. The room went still. Nothing happened. Ron blinked. Wait. What? Harry's heart sank. The energy in the chamber vanished, like an extinguished flame. Hermione stepped closer, cautiously touching the stone ring. It shut down. Ron threw up his hands. Oh, brilliant. All that effort, all that ancient magical dialing, and we get a whole lot of nothing? He turned to Hermione. You always said I had terrible luck, but this is just insulting. Harry exhaled sharply. He had felt it, the strange, electric charge in the air just before the ring powered up. It had been real. They had almost done something incredible. Hermione, however, didn't seem too discouraged. If anything, she looked more intrigued. There has to be a reason it failed. She ran her fingers over the symbols on the dial-up device, deep in thought. Maybe it wasn't ready. Maybe we didn't complete the sequence properly. Ron huffed. Or maybe it's just broken. Hermione shot him a look. Oh, please, Ron. This device has survived for over 1,000 years in a sealed chamber beneath Hogwarts. It's hardly going to break now. Ron crossed his arms. Well, something's not working. Hermione ignored him, already moving toward the massive bookshelves lining the far wall. Dust still covered most of the chamber, but the shelves were filled with ancient tomes, their bindings cracked but surprisingly well preserved. Books. Her eyes gleamed with excitement. Books older than Hogwarts. Ron groaned. You sound happy about that. Of course I'm happy. Who knows what knowledge has been left here? She ran a hand across the spines of the books, carefully selecting one with a dark blue cover embossed with faded silver runes. Harry, meanwhile, was looking around the chamber. There was so much here, intricate carvings along the walls, strange stone pedestals with unknown purposes, and statues of the 3 founders who had built this place. But something else caught his eye. A small desk, half buried under dust, stood against the far wall. Scattered across its surface were scrolls, parchments, and ink pots long dried out. But there, in the very center, was something much newer. A note. A hidden address. Harry picked it up carefully, brushing the dust away. The parchment was old, but not ancient, perhaps only a few decades old. The writing was in perfectly neat cursive. He read aloud. For those who seek true knowledge. Go to 146 Eldrin Lane, Godric's Hollow. Silence. Ron frowned. Wait, Godric's Hollow? As in your Godric's Hollow? Harry stared at the words, his stomach twisting. That wasn't just some random place. That was the very village where he had been born. Where his parents had died. Hermione peered over his shoulder. That's specific. Someone left this here for a reason. Ron looked between them. All right. I'll bite. Who exactly leaves their home address inside a secret chamber buried beneath a 1,000-year-old castle? Hermione bit her lip, deep in thought. Someone who knew this place might be found one day. Harry's fingers tightened around the note. He had been to every corner of Godric's Hollow, but he had never heard of an Eldrin Lane. Ron exhaled. So, what? We just pack up and go on a mystery field trip? Hermione tapped the book she had pulled from the shelves. Not yet. She flipped the cover open and scanned the pages with the kind of intense focus only she could manage. Ron sighed. What now? Hermione didn't look up. I'm trying to figure out why the gate shut down. Deciphering the gate. Harry and Ron exchanged a glance but waited as Hermione read. The Nox's magic was designed to conceal and protect, she murmured. They didn't believe in war, but they did believe in hiding. She flipped a page, eyes scanning quickly. Then she stopped. Harry frowned. What is it? Hermione slowly read the passage aloud. To activate the Great Ring, one must align the path to the desired place. Speak the coordinates in the tongue of the wise. And above all, know that the journey cannot be undone. She looked up. It's asking for a confirmation. Ron blinked. A what? Hermione pointed at the device. It didn't fail, it was waiting for us to confirm our destination. She turned back to the book, flipping another page. That's why it shut down. We didn't accept the journey. Ron groaned. Oh, great. So, what, we have to tell it we actually want to go. Apparently. Harry stepped forward. Then let's do it. Ron gave him an incredulous look. Seriously? You want to just agree to whatever this thing is asking? Harry met his gaze. We came this far. The founders built this place for a reason. And that address, it's connected to all of this. He glanced at the ring. We won't know the truth unless we go. Ron grumbled but didn't argue further. Hermione turned back to the dialing device, pressing her palm against the ancient symbols. A soft glow emitted from the stone, as if sensing her touch. Then, in a firm voice, she said. We accept. The chamber reacted instantly. The ring groaned, the runes along its surface blazing to life. The symbols on the dialing device spun rapidly, clicking into place. The air vibrated with raw energy, crackling as the ancient machinery roared back to life. A deep hum filled the room, rising in intensity. Ron took a cautious step back. Is it supposed to sound this ominous? Then, with a burst of blinding white light, the center of the ring ignited. A swirling, shimmering vortex of pure energy exploded within the stone circle, surging forward before settling into a smooth, mirror-like surface. The portal was open. Harry's heart pounded. Well. He glanced at Ron and Hermione. Guess there's only one way to find out what's on the other side. Ron hesitated, then sighed dramatically. If we get eaten by some kind of interdimensional monster, I am personally haunting both of you. Hermione rolled her eyes. Then, without another word, the three of them stepped through the gate. Chapter 5, The Keeper of the Grove. The moment Harry stepped through the shimmering portal, reality twisted. It wasn't painful, but it was unnatural, a sense of being unmoored from time and space, pulled forward by an unseen force. The colors of the world blurred, blending into a rushing swirl of green, gold, and silver light. There was no sound, no weight, just a deep, thrumming pulse of ancient magic vibrating through his bones. Then, with a soft rush of air, his feet found solid ground. The sacred grove. The first thing Harry noticed was the air, cool, fresh, and thick with the scent of earth and rain. It carried an energy unlike anything he had felt before, something so pure and old that it made the hairs on the back of his neck rise. They stood in a circular clearing, completely enclosed by immense trees. Their trunks were thick and smooth, taller than any Hogwarts tower, their canopies woven into an unbroken dome of dense foliage. The branches stretched so high they disappeared into the mist, and despite the lack of direct sunlight, the clearing wasn't dark. Soft blue and green light radiated from the trees themselves. Bioluminescent vines coiled around the trunks, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Small, glowing blossoms drifted in the air like fireflies, casting a dreamlike glow over the moss-covered ground. There was no path leading in or out. The trees formed an impenetrable wall, as if the entire forest had grown around this place to protect it. And at its center, raised on a platform of smooth stone, stood a long wooden table. It was unlike any table Harry had ever seen, elegantly carved with intricate, shifting runes. It was long, polished, and built not for sitting, but for standing, as if meant for important decisions to be made here. Behind the table, waiting patiently, stood an old man. The Knox Elder. He was tall and regal, his posture straight but effortless, exuding the quiet authority of one who has seen centuries pass. His silver-white hair cascaded past his shoulders, and his robes shimmered between deep green and silver, woven from a fabric that seemed almost liquid in the dim light. His eyes, piercing silver blue, were ancient and knowing, filled with a depth that made it impossible to tell his true age. His lips curved into a small, gentle smile as he studied them. It has been many, many years since anyone stepped through that gate. His voice was smooth and deep, carrying the weight of time itself. And yet, here you are. Harry swallowed, feeling the sheer significance of the moment settle over him like a heavy cloak. Are you one of the Knox? He asked. The elder nodded slowly. I am Eldrin, last keeper of the grove. And you? His gaze lingered on Harry before sweeping over Hermione and Ron, his smile deepening. You are the first to arrive since the days of the Founders. Hermione stepped forward, eyes wide. Then you really knew them? She sounded breathless. Godric Gryffindor, Rowena Ravenclaw, Helga Hufflepuff. She hesitated. And Salazar Slytherin? Eldrin's smile faltered, just slightly. I did, he said softly. And I remember them well. He raised a hand, and the air shimmered. Echoes of the past. A ripple of silver mist swirled above the table. Shapes began to form, holographic figures of light, echoes of a time long gone. They saw Godric Gryffindor, his arms crossed, his expression thoughtful. Rowena Ravenclaw and Helga Hufflepuff stood beside him, engaged in quiet conversation with the younger Eldrin. But Salazar Slytherin stood apart. His robes were darker, his face shadowed, his eyes sharp with suspicion and impatience. They came seeking knowledge, Eldrin murmured. They wish to learn from us. And we wish to guide them. The images flickered. Rowena was the most curious. She wished to understand all things. Eldrin's gaze softened. Helga wished for harmony, for all to wield magic without division. And Godric. He was noble, bold, ready to fight for what he believed in. His expression darkened. But Salazar. He sought power. Ron muttered under his breath, of course he did. Eldrin sighed. He did not understand our ways. He saw strength as a means of control, a weapon to wield. When we refused to share our greatest secrets, he turned away from us. A long silence followed. Then, Eldrin reached into his robes and pulled out a small, glowing object. The gift of the Knox. It was a smooth, round stone, pulsing softly with deep silver light. The glow seemed to move beneath the surface, as if something inside was alive. This, Eldrin said, is a relic of the Knox. A gift we once considered offering to the Founders. Harry felt something stir deep within him, a strange, undeniable pull toward the stone. What does it do? He asked quietly. Eldrin's gaze darkened. It grants its bearer the ability to vanish completely, not only from sight, but from time, from perception. A true invisibility, beyond what any magic can detect. Hermione gasped, eyes darting between the stone and Eldrin. That's impossible. Even disillusionment charms or an invisibility cloak don't. She stopped, staring at the stone in awe. This is something entirely different. Eldrin nodded. It is. And it was meant to be used in times of great necessity. Ron frowned. But you never gave it to the founders. Eldrin's voice grew heavy. Because we saw what would happen. Salazar would have taken it. And he would have used it to control, to deceive, to dominate. His fingers curled around the stone. And so we kept it hidden. The decision. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged a long, uncertain glance. We don't have to take it, Hermione said quickly. It's obviously dangerous if misused. Ron scratched his head. Yeah, but it's also incredible. Imagine what we could do with it. Harry stared at the stone. He could feel its magic humming in his bones, ancient and waiting. He exhaled. We'll take it, he said. And we'll keep it secret. Eldrin studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. Then it is yours. The moment the stone touched Harry's palm, a warmth spread through him, pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. It felt as if the stone was alive, waiting for him. A meal in the grove. Eldrin turned to the wooden table, raising a hand. With a single motion, plates of food and goblets of drink appeared. The aroma of freshly baked bread, roasted meats, and sweet fruit filled the air. Goblets of sparkling golden liquid shimmered in the soft glow of the grove. You must eat, Eldrin said simply. The journey has been long, and it is not yet over. As they ate, Eldrin closed his eyes and began to meditate, his presence merging into the grove itself. And deep in Harry's pocket, the stone of the Nox pulsed faintly, waiting for the moment it would be needed. Chapter 6, The Lost Colony of the Nox. As the last crumbs of their meal disappeared, the air in the grove shifted, not physically, but in a way that Harry could feel. It was as if the space around them had been holding its breath, and now, with their hunger sated, the grove itself was ready to speak. Eldrin, the Nox Elder, slowly opened his eyes. They shimmered in the soft light, ancient and unfathomable, like the stars themselves. You have eaten well, he observed. Good. The food here is unlike what you know, it nourishes both body and spirit. Ron wiped his mouth on his sleeve and sighed in satisfaction. Blimey, that was the best meal I've ever had. He looked at the elder curiously. What was it? It tasted familiar, but different. Eldrin's lips curled into an amused smile. You would call it bread, fruit, and meat, but it is far more than that. Everything here is infused with the essence of life, drawn from the deepest magics of this world. Hermione leaned forward, intrigued. Essence of life? That sounds similar to magical herbalism. Is it related to plant-based potions? Eldrin's silver blue eyes gleamed. Yes, child of wisdom. But it is also so much more. His gaze swept over the three of them, his expression unreadable. And yet, I sense none of you hold a deep interest in the ways of plants and herbs. Harry shifted uncomfortably. He had always preferred defense and flying, and while he had nothing against herbology, he certainly wasn't passionate about it. Ron, as expected, looked completely indifferent. No offense, sir, but plants have never been my thing. Except, when they're trying to kill me. Hermione flushed. I do find it fascinating, really. I mean, plants and herbs are the foundation of most potions, and their magical properties are extraordinary. But I suppose my real interests lie elsewhere. Eldrin nodded knowingly. That is the way of all knowledge, it calls to different hearts in different ways. He folded his hands behind his back. Nonetheless, the knowledge of the Nox is not bound to a single path. Should you ever wish to learn, our doors will always be open to you. The origins of the Nox portal. A comfortable silence settled over them for a moment before Harry finally spoke. You said we were the first to come through the portal in centuries. But why was it built in the first place? Eldrin's face grew solemn. Because once, long ago, we needed sanctuary. Ron, still picking at his teeth with his wand, looked up with interest. Wait. You mean the Nox lived on Earth? Eldrin nodded. Many, many years ago, our people sought refuge from an enemy who wished to destroy us. The Earth was young then, untouched by the hands of wizards and men. We established a colony, hidden deep within the forests, veiled from all eyes. Hermione's breath hitched. A lost Nox colony. On Earth? Yes. And for a time, we thrived. Eldrin's eyes darkened, full of memories from a past long forgotten. But peace is never eternal. As the years passed, our enemy searched for us, and our sanctuary was no longer safe. We chose to leave, sealing the colony behind layers of magic so it would never be disturbed. Harry's heart pounded. And no one's found it since? Eldrin smiled faintly. No human has ever breached the veil of the Nox. It remains untouched, lost to the passage of time. He gestured around them. This place, too, is hidden, separate from the world you know. It exists outside of time, outside of space. A sanctuary of peace. A universe beyond magic. Ron, who had been following the conversation with furrowed brows, finally spoke. So, this enemy of yours. Who were they? Wizards? Eldrin's expression turned grave. No, child of magic. They were not wizards, nor were they of your world. He looked up, and the bioluminescent vines above them shifted, revealing a glimpse of the sky beyond the canopy. Stars twinkled softly, shifting in a way that seemed almost unnatural. Ron followed his gaze and frowned. What are we looking at? Hermione inhaled sharply. The universe, she whispered. Ron scoffed. Well, yeah, obviously. But what's it got to do with? He stopped mid-sentence, realization dawning on him. His face turned pale. Hang on. Are you saying your enemy wasn't from Earth? Eldrin merely smiled. Ron gawked at him. You mean to tell me that Earth's not the only place with magic? Harry exchanged a glance with Hermione. He had never given much thought to life beyond Earth. Magic had always been so deeply tied to his world that the idea of it existing elsewhere was staggering. Eldrin chuckled softly. You think like wizards. You believe magic is bound to bloodlines, to spells, to incantations. He spread his arms. But magic is simply the force that binds the universe together. It exists everywhere, in all things. Hermione's eyes were alight with wonder. That makes sense. In a way. The laws of physics, of energy and matter, they're all interconnected. If magic is just another force, then it should exist beyond Earth. Ron, however, still looked completely lost. Right. Well. That's all very fascinating, but I think I need to sit down. Time has no hold here. Harry suddenly frowned. Wait. How long have we been here? He glanced at his watch, but the hands were frozen. Eldrin gave a knowing smile. Time does not exist in this place. Harry blinked. What? This grove is beyond the flow of your world's time. You have been here for hours, but when you return, mere minutes will have passed. Ron let out a relieved sigh. Oh, thank Merlin. I was starting to think we'd come back and find Hogwarts in ruins. Eldrin chuckled. Worry not, child of magic. You may return whenever you wish, and you will always find peace here. The way home. Eldrin turned and raised a hand. The air shimmered, and the portal they had stepped through reappeared, swirling with golden light. Harry, Hermione, and Ron exchanged glances. There was so much more to learn, so much more to ask, but they knew they couldn't stay forever. Eldrin inclined his head. Go now. But know this, the knowledge of the Nox is always waiting. Should you seek it, the gate will open. Harry nodded. Thank you. For everything. Eldrin smiled. May your path be filled with light. With one last look at the serene beauty of the grove, they stepped forward. And the world twisted around them once more. Chapter 7, The Headmaster's Lamp. The moment their feet touched the cold stone floor of the chamber, the warm glow of the Nox Grove vanished behind them. The cool, stale air of the forgotten room replaced the crisp, life-filled atmosphere of the grove, and it felt as if they had just woken from a particularly vivid dream. Harry took a deep breath and glanced around. The chamber was exactly as they had left it, silent, ancient, untouched by time, but something was different. At the very center of the great stone table, where they had left nothing, a note rested. Hermione was the first to notice. Look, she exclaimed, striding forward and snatching it up. The parchment was old, yet somehow pristine, its edges glowing faintly with a soft golden light. She read aloud. To those who step through the gate. A beacon was left long ago, entrusted to the keeper of this place. It will light the path of those who seek knowledge. Find it in the Chamber of Wisdom. She lowered the note, her brow furrowed. The Chamber of Wisdom. That must mean the headmaster's office. Ron blinked. Wait. The Nox left something for Dumbledore? Hermione nodded slowly. It sounds like a lamp, a way for the headmaster to know when someone uses the portal. She glanced at Harry. That means every time someone has gone through, the lamp has signaled. Harry felt a strange unease settle in his stomach. If the lamp had been glowing when they came through, had Dumbledore noticed? Ron let out a low whistle. Well, that settles it. We've got to go see him. A different world. As they stepped out of the chamber and into the familiar corridors of Hogwarts, the change in atmosphere was stark. The castle felt dull in comparison to the glowing, peaceful beauty of the Knox Grove. The walls seemed colder, the air staler. Even the torches flickering along the halls felt dim compared to the soft, golden light of the grove. The library was no different. As they passed through the quiet, towering shelves, Hermione whispered, "It feels small, doesn't it?" Harry nodded. He had spent hours in this place before, surrounded by thousands of books, yet somehow, after what they had seen, it felt limited. The knowledge stored in Hogwarts suddenly seemed only a fraction of what was truly out there. Ron, for once, seemed just as deep in thought. "I dunno what to make of all this," he muttered. "Magic from the stars? Hidden places outside of time? It's just weird. Makes you wonder how much we really know." Harry glanced at him, surprised. "That's actually a good point." Ron scowled. "Cheers, mate. No need to sound so surprised." Hermione, who had been walking ahead, suddenly stopped. "We're here." Convincing McGonagall. The gargoyle statue stood before them, unmoving. They had no idea what the password was. Before they could figure out their next move, Professor McGonagall appeared, her sharp eyes immediately narrowing at the three of them. "And what, may I ask, are you three doing lurking outside the headmaster's office at this hour?" Harry hesitated for a split second before deciding on the truth. "We need to speak with Professor Dumbledore. It's important." McGonagall raised a skeptical eyebrow. "And I suppose it cannot wait until morning?" "No, Professor," Hermione said firmly. "It's urgent." Ron nodded. Really urgent." McGonagall's lips thinned. "If this is another case of you three stumbling into trouble, It's about the Knox," Harry interrupted. McGonagall froze. For the first time in all the years they had known her, they saw shock cross her face. It was gone in an instant, replaced by her usual firm composure, but it was enough. Before she could respond, a voice from above called down. "Let them in, Minerva." Professor Dumbledore's voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable note of surprise beneath it. McGonagall's mouth opened as if to protest, but after a brief hesitation, she simply nodded and stepped aside. The gargoyle shifted, revealing the spiraling staircase beyond. Dumbledore's voice drifted down. "Come in, all of you." McGonagall looked deeply offended, but she did not follow them inside. The headmaster's lamp. As they stepped into Dumbledore's office, the warm glow of the many trinkets and books surrounded them. Fawkes let out a quiet trill from his perch, and the portraits of past headmasters stirred slightly in their frames. Dumbledore stood near his desk, his piercing blue eyes studying them intently. "The Knox," he repeated softly, as if testing the word. "Tell me what you have seen." They told him everything. The Chamber of Forgotten Knowledge. The portal. The Knox Grove. The ancient wisdom the founders had once sought. Eldrin's stories, the lost colony, the knowledge of magic beyond Earth. Dumbledore listened in complete silence, his expression unreadable. He did not interrupt once. And all the while, in the corner of the office, a single lamp hung from the ceiling, glowing a faint green. It wasn't until Hermione finally paused for breath that she noticed it. Her eyes widened. "Professor," she said, pointing. "Why is that lamp glowing?" Dumbledore followed her gaze and, for the first time that night, he looked truly taken aback. He walked toward it slowly, his long fingers brushing over its surface. The green light pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. "I did not know it could do this," he murmured. "This lamp was given to Hogwarts long ago, by those who claimed it would light the way when knowledge was sought. I never expected to see it react." Harry's voice was quiet. "It means someone's used the portal." Dumbledore nodded. "And now, I know who." With a flick of his wand, the light faded into darkness. The end of the day, but not the end of the journey. They left the office feeling lighter, yet full of questions. As they made their way back to the common room, Ron let out a deep sigh. "Well, that was a lot." Hermione nodded. "I still can't believe we spoke to the Knox. That we saw a piece of magic beyond what anyone else in Hogwarts even knows about." Harry said nothing for a moment. Then, finally, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the Knox stone. It pulsed softly, a quiet reminder that their journey wasn't over. As they sat by the fire, they stared at the stone in silent wonder. Their adventure was far from finished. Thank you for listening. I hope to write more in the future.